Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Figma for EDU monthly workshop. My name is Miggy. I'm joined by Alex. We're going to be talking about prototyping basics in Figma. So let's go. First thing that I'm going to cover in the Figma design editor, right? This middle area is the canvas. Over here on the left, you'll notice that there are pages that you can move through. Under that is the layers. The layers panel is basically taking account of everything that is on your canvas and how they are stacked on your canvas. The first thing that I'm going to do is in this file, I am going to select this frame. I'm going to press Shift Spacebar. And when I press Shift Spacebar, I will see a preview of that frame. So the thing about frames in Figma is that, or the thing about prototyping in Figma is that all prototypes require at least one frame to play. So what a prototype is it helps you test your ideas. So if you're designing things, they're fairly static. You're designing for mobile, for web, for any interactive surface, you want to be able to test those ideas. You want to be able to create a screen recording to demonstrate those ideas to others. Creating prototypes is going to allow you to tell that story. So the way that I like to say it is that prototyping is interactive storytelling. So I'm going to show you a simple prototype that we have here. So we're currently in the Figma design editor, right? When I select this frame, any object that I select here on the canvas, you're going to see on the right-hand side various properties that are associated with it. So when I select this frame right here, I'm going to come over to the top right. We're currently in design mode, but we're going to switch over to prototype mode to see how this interacts. So this is just an example. I'm going to call out some of the concepts within this example that we'll be covering today. So let me select this frame. I'm going to click on the top right in the layers, in the property panel over here and click prototype. When I go into prototype mode, you'll see little lines kind of going here, there, and everywhere. What those are the interactions that have been designed that work through this prototype. You'll notice this little flag right here. This is a flow start point. We'll talk about those in a bit, but when I click play, it will show me a preview of this prototype. So I'm able to scroll up and down. I can scroll these left and right. And when an object, I can interact with it. You'll notice a little like hover state. I can click on that and it's going to take me into a little gallery. Now, one thing about this once again is the prototype preview. When I click on these settings, I can even choose follow prototype. So you can see the frame that it's currently on when we interact with it. So the concepts that we're going to learn today, we're going to talk about using designs, making components, which are reusable elements. So then that way they can persist and give you consistency, little components that are going to be composed of text, graphics, imagery. So then that way you can reuse them. We're going to talk about the scrolling, and then we're going to talk about the breakdown of creating these hotspots, these interactive elements in your design. So then this way you can prototype your own ideas. So once again, the notion of a prototype is to create an interactive design, to tell a story. You can use these prototypes in your classroom for tons of different activities that you can accomplish. So many folks use prototypes to help them describe an idea that they have or demonstrate an idea that they have or test an idea that they have before they go in to develop it. We use prototypes at Figma all the time to design Figma. So the first concept that we're going to cover before we begin, we're going to talk about components. A component is an element in Figma that can be reused. This right here, if you think about, I'm going to click on the design panel and make sure I'm in the design panel for right now. This item right here, this is what is commonly referred to as a card component. If you've seen a mobile app like Instagram, you probably are familiar with the way that this is constructed. Now, what you can see here are the primitive objects that are used in creating this. So you'll see that we have a shape, we have text, right? We have these like little graphic elements, we have an image, and all of this is housed within a frame. So if you've been to one of my introductory Figma courses, you've probably seen, the creation of these things, creating a shape, adding a text, adding a frame. You'll look down here and you'll see all of those primitives are available. So when I hover over the text tool, I can click and add text to the canvas. When I select over here, this is the frame tool, right? I can click and draw a frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the basics of these things in use of or in service of making a prototype. So let's make a simple component. You can see I have some examples down here of the components that are comprising or constructing this prototype. You can see them in action here. These are the basic definitions. And with you all right now, we're going to create a component together. So then that way we can use it in an interface. Okay. So for those of you just joining, make sure you get a copy of this file and you're in Figma with us. I'm going to walk through the building of a very basic component. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to create a frame. I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to draw out a very simple frame. I'm going to press the O key, or if you would prefer, you can come down here and you can draw an ellipse. We're just going to create something very simple. Once again, this is intended for a beginner audience. So when I click on the frame, I draw in a circle, and then I can add some text. And don't worry, I will cover these steps once again. I'm going to add some text here, and I'm just going to type in, first name, last name, just to get a sense of it. So you can see here, I can select this text. I can come over here to the right, and I can make it larger. And what I want to do is I want to show y'all, and also like a little trick. If you hold on Alt or Option key, when you hover over that field, I can just drag that larger or smaller, saving me some time there. So what we're doing is we want to create a component. We want to make something that's going to be reusable. So if we imagine that we're going to create, let's say, a directory app, right? We're going to need a frame, right? We add the frame right here from the canvas. That frame serves as like a container, right? It houses these other objects. Then I'm going to come and I'm going to choose a circle. But for this second round, I'm going to choose a rectangle. And I'm going to show you how rectangles in user interface design are often the preferred way to create a circle. So I'm going to select that rectangle. I'm going to come over here to the right-hand side under the design panel with the rectangle selected. I'm going to come over here to this corner radius option. What that does is it rounds off the corner of the rectangle. And if you take that number all the way to the right, it's going to get so large that it turns that rectangle into a circle. Now, when you're doing interaction or UI design, this is usually the preferred method for making a circle. I'm going to press the T key. It's the type tool. We're going to add in first name, last name. It doesn't matter. I could put in a full name. I'm going to put in my full name, Miguel Cardona. So that's me right there. You'll notice that as I move these elements around this frame, right, you'll see little alignment indicators kind of telling me, how this thing is growing. Okay, cool. So I'm going to select this frame here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this into a component. A component is reusable and then updatable. So I'm going to select that frame. And with that selected up here, you're going to see the component icon. The component icon is 4 diamonds at an kind of like in that diamond shape. That will create a main component. Somebody asked me what the alt trick was. I'll show you one more time. When you select this text field and you come over here to the typography panel and you want to quickly increase and decrease the size of that text, if you hold down the alt key or the option key, it'll just kind of grow and shrink down. So it's a faster way of modifying values in their fields, and it can be applied to any field that has that value. So what we've just done, sure, can darken up the background a bit. So what we've just done is we've created a component here. Now, components, this being the main component, has that 4 diamond icon. That 4 diamond icon means that the component is the main component and governs the actions of all of its instances. Its instance is a copy of it. So I'm going to copy and paste, Command C, Command V, right? And I'll have a copy. You can also press Command D or Control D if you're on Windows to duplicate and get a copy of it. And so each of these are instances of the main component, right? So this is going to be used heavily in prototyping because you don't want to create every object in your frame from scratch. This is going to save you a lot of time. So when I duplicate this, right? So I can hold down the Option key, the Alt key if you're on Windows. I'm going to click and drag that down. That'll make a copy. And then if I press Command D, it'll duplicate it several times. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what is the true benefit of this? This being the main component here, I can give it a proper name. I'm going to call this, directory listing. And when I edit anything in that first frame, the other frames are going to follow suit. So if I need to update this, let's say I want this to be larger. Let's say I select the whole item and I want to round off their corners. I can round off those corners right here. I can select the directory listing, come over to corner radius, apply a corner radius value of 8, and you'll see that all of these are there. Now, what I can do is I can begin to update this. So, I can say, Victor, I could say Jarek, I can say Zaria, right? And you'll see that these are here, but not reflecting back on the original one. So if I make any edits, you'll see that it follows suit. So when you're making prototypes, any element that you're going to reuse or is going to persist, you're going to make into a component, and that's going to save you a lot of time. All right, and then these components themselves, we can actually begin to update those. So like, let's say if I wanted to add an image to this, I'll show you one last thing. This is really cool with this component. When I select that circle, I can come over here to the right and I can choose the fill, and then I can change the color of it, right? And I can change and update, let's say Jarek's color and Zaria's colors could be green, right? But I can also set this basic element not just as a color, but also as an image. So I can set that as an image, and then that image can then be replaced as part of that prototype. And so if I was to select the image, I come over to the fill, I can upload from computer. And let's say from the computer, I'm going to choose a profile photo. I think I have a profile photo on my desktop, and I'm going to grab that there. And then I'm able to upload that image right into that shape. So the one thing that you want to consider, and you can find this in many of my workshops, is that images are fills on shapes. All right, so any questions? So somebody's asking about local variables. Unfortunately, this is a beginner's workshop. We're not going to be talking about variables here. Let's see. All right, so one more time, I will cover just the making of the component one quick time, and then we're going to move on to the next section where we begin to employ this into the prototype. So I'm going to create a frame. I press the F key. When I draw out the frame, you'll notice the frame. You'll see here the layout, the size of it, so the dimensions of the frame. And what we can do is we can add elements. Now, what I'm going to do is instead of making it over here, we're going to start by creating a frame that is a mobile device frame. So let's move these over here. I'm going to move them over here to the right. We're going to start by creating a mobile device frame. I'm going to press the F key. That's going to be the frame tool. The frame tool is down here. When I press the F key or enable the frame tool, you'll notice over here on the right, a whole bunch of different sizes. This represents the viewport size of every device that you might be working on. So right here, if I'm working with the iPhone 16 or iPhone 16 Pro, I can choose that device and it will then create a frame that matches that device's dimensions. So if you don't see a device on that list, you can manually type in the width and height, but my recommendation is to always look for the viewport size of a device, and that will ensure that your font sizes and scaling will all be correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this frame to have a much better sense of how big our components should be. So I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to draw out another frame here. I can choose a fill background color for it. So I can change that up. Let's say I want to make it just light gray to help us see it against the white background. Now, this is going to give me a much better sense of the size. I'm going to press the O key. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to make sure that O is the correct size. There we go. I'm going to select that fill. We're going to choose image fill. So I have an image fill for that right there. And I'm also going to add in some text. And this is going to be like, we're going to make a whole directory of these. So then that way, when we tap on them, we can look at a profile. So I'm going to type in my name, Miguel Cardona. And I'm going to make this component within this frame, just so that way I have a much better sense of, let's say, the ergonomics of this frame. So this dimension is going to match that frame width. I can set this over here on the left and I can modify its position. So I can say, hey, we want it to be 8 from the right or 12 from the right. Now, some of you out there, if you're a little bit more, if you're a little bit more familiar with Figma, you say, hey, you can use auto layout for that. I'm just choosing not to use auto layout specifically because this is going to be more of a beginner workshop. And then that's just going to open up a whole nother slew of questions for now. So if you want to learn about auto layout, check out my auto layout workshop. I'm going to be like this. I'll say, we'll just do it like in YouTube. I'm like, click down there for the auto layout workshop. So let's select this. This is now going to be a frame. So you can see this is a component. Everything that is inside of the frame kind of moves with it. So we have the text, we have the image placeholder. Let's apply a bit of corner radius. Now, when I select this, I can give it a name and I can call it, directory object. And we can select that. I'm going to come up over here. So this over here to the right is create component. You can also right click with your cursor and you'll get a whole bunch of options here. And you will also have the option to create a component there. So there's always going to be multiple ways to access the things that you're looking for when you're working in Figma. So here, create component, up here with that selected, it's going to recognize that the frame is selected. So it's going to give you the option to do so. Once that's been created, you're going to see those 4 diamonds. When you duplicate this by option dragging, you get a copy of it. And you look over in the layers panel, you'll notice that in the layers panel, the main component is 4 diamonds and the instance, the copy of it, right? The sort of subordinate copy of it is going to just be a single hollow diamond. And what you can do is you can begin to populate that here and then begin to update this. So we can start to create a bit of an interface if we're creating a whole listing of these elements. So I can hold down the option key, I can drag this down and I can hit Command D, 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 right? And we can just keep on going beyond the bottom of the frame there, right? So let's say up here, I'm going to put in some text. I'm going to say directory. We're going to select that text. We're going to put it in the middle. Not going to be too concerned with the formatting of it because what we want to do is just kind of like work with the basics of understanding of like what we have here. So you have directory, right? We could throw in Jarek. We could throw in Zaria, right? Let's see who else do we have here. We got Shin. We have Jamie, right? So we're able to populate those. And then let's say for those, we could even just go to color and begin to select colors. Oops. Choose colors for each person. So that way you get a sense of how those components work. Now, let's get a preview of this prototype. So we're going to select that frame. We're going to go to prototype. And what we're going to do is we just want to see how this scrolls. So in prototype, we're going to go to scroll behavior and says overflow, no scrolling. So once again, design mode, you're just designing things on the canvas. Everything that you select here, you modify those properties there. When you go to prototype mode, we're kind of thinking about the canvas a little bit differently. So when I select the frame, the properties for this frame is whether or not it scrolls. So we want this to scroll vertically. We want it to scroll up and down. So once that has been set to vertical, whenever we preview this frame as a prototype, so we can come up here and we can choose preview. The shortcut key for that is shift space. And you can see it previewed here and we can scroll. So we have our first interaction here, right? And that's going to be scrolling frames. So when you have content that sits outside of the frame or outside of the bounds of a component, then you can set it to scroll. So you can even see here in this example, in this frame, when I grab this like 1, 2, 3, you could see that it's now interactive, right? Because these three objects sit outside of that main frame area. And I'll show you that one more time. So by selecting this frame, right, we're going to go to design mode, and in design mode, right, the layout option, we could choose to unclip that content. And when we unclip that content, we see the bounds of where the frame is and everything that's sort of outside of it. One cool thing is we don't necessarily for this prototype need to have it restricted to this height. We can drag that all the way down. And when we go to prototype, we can even change the prototype settings. And those prototype settings, we can set that device to be the iPhone 16 Pro. I believe that's the one that we chose. So when I select that frame, I press Shift Space Bar, we can now see it in the context of the device itself. So we could even begin to notice aspects of the device that could impact our design. All right, so seeing questions. So should we expand the height of the frame designing the objects off the screen or keep it at the iPhone size? I would say that when you're working at like the phone and you're like setting it, you can expand that height. You could always kind of bring it back down, but you'll kind of see what happens live there in the prototype. Okay, so now that we have that set, Um, another thing that we can consider is I'm going to go back to the example. And if you look back at this example, not only are we scrolling up and down, but then we have this scrolling left to right, right? This two-dimensional scroll. Now, I would argue that even just a prototype that begins to have these simple interactions, right, can really tell a lot about the design. So we're going to walk through quickly how to create that horizontal scroll. So someone's asking, so is there a way to go from iPhone 16 and then an Android large? So what Victor's asking is about responsiveness, right? And to really think about responsiveness, you need to start working with auto layout. Auto layout is going to be a type of frame in Figma that's going to allow you to change the size of objects. But there's also something known as constraints. So constraints are going to tell objects inside of a frame how to resize. So let's say within our directory, we had like another like little object here, like a little rectangle or something that might be a something that we interact with, right? So we have this little design here. Now, if we were to use this component in a different layout size, so if I was to create a frame and I choose, let's say, Android medium, right? When I move this directory object over, the size isn't going to match up. However, that's where constraints come in because I can inform this object how to behave when this resizes. So right now, when I resize this, you'll see that that red box doesn't follow with the design. However, because this is inside of a frame, you'll notice this little box over here, and this is constraints. What constraints do is they tell the objects inside of a frame, so your text, your shape, anything that you have there, how to behave when the frame, the parent of the frame resizes. So I could say, hey, let's constrain to the right and to the center. And so what that does is when this resizes, it's going to move that from the right into the center. So if I have these elements and I'm working in a different device type, right, they will then follow suit. So those settings are going to matter. Now, when you're thinking about your prototypes and you're thinking about your different designs, what I would recommend is to consider a device for each page that you're working on, right? So this might be our iPhone page. Let's say you want to create an Android specific flow. I could do Android over here, and because we have the same components, the components are going to be updated from that centralized location. This is where you might work on that given layout. Now, these constraints can also be set on these objects themselves. So if you wanted to create a device that's responsive, right, we can select these. We could say, hey, have left and right constraints, and then that will also impact the design as well. So then that way you can have a more responsive prototype. And when you're thinking about designing for responsiveness, when you go into present mode, there's going to be an option that is kind of independent of the devices, and that's going to be a responsive prototype. So that's actually going to change with the size of your window. All right, let me just resize my window size there. Okay, so went off a little bit off track, but hopefully that helps answer your question. Is that yes, when you're first starting, you might design to one device. When you start getting more responsive, you need to think about how your components respond to the device size and the respective layouts. When you're prototyping, my recommendation is unless you're working with a responsive prototype, try to use one device per page. The reason I say that is that these prototyping settings, right? The prototype settings where you're able to set the device, that is per page. And if you do multiple on the same page, then you're going to find yourself changing this pretty frequently. Otherwise, I would just recommend using responsive. But these are the different choices that you're going to have to make. You can't have just everything play out. One there's not like one solution for everything. You have to think through the solution and putting that through. So yes, I just walked through the responsive prototype. This is a responsive prototype. So when I come here, you can see that this grows and contracts. These items, when I select them, right, they're set to left and right constraints, so they grow and contract with the width of that frame. When I click here, I can go into presentation mode, and in presentation mode, you will see an option for responsive prototypes. That responsive prototype will then match the width of the window that you're currently working with and will respond accordingly. So if I set that to responsive, you will see that this is now setting to my window size. And when I let go, it will change that size. Let me just set my window accordingly again. Otherwise, it might ruin my recording. Okay. So hopefully that answers that question. But yes, these are all things that are possible once you start to dig a little bit deeper. So the next thing that I wanted to do was talk a little bit about scrolling. We want to scroll from left to right. So let's say I want to create some additional elements up here that scroll left to right. We can do exactly the same thing that we did with this frame where we have a row of elements. Once they exceed like a little area, they can then scroll. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to draw a rectangle. Let's make this rectangle blue so we can see it a little bit better on the canvas, or let's make it red. This is going to be like, let's say, an image. Let's make it an image, actually. I'm going to select it. We're going to apply that corner radius. I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag the corner radius all the way there. And so you see we have this like basic element. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to drag it to the right. I'm going to give it about a spacing, let's say about, 16 pixel spacing. And then I'm going to press Command D, and that's going to duplicate it. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of these, right? And so what I want to do is I want these to scroll to the left and right, similar to how you might see stories on a social application. I'm going to select them all. And this is another time where we're going to make a component. We're going to have this housed in that component structure for reuse. So I'm going to select them all. We're going to come up here, or you can just right click, create component, and you'll see that there's a component. We will rename this to story. And the thing that you'll notice is that the bounding box around this component covers everything, right? And in order for scrolling to work, you need to have elements that go kind of outside of the frame. So if I was to try to resize this, you're going to see that those elements, they squish. We don't want that. So once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the whoops. I'm going to hold the Command key or the Control key if you're on Windows, and that's going to resize this like little bounding box without resizing the contents, right? I'll show you that one more time. So I'm going to draw some rectangles. We're going to give them an image fill. We're going to give them an image fill. I'm going to select that. We're going to apply a round corner radius. With this object selected, I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to duplicate it to the right. Let's say, then I'm going to hit Command D or Control D. We're going to duplicate a bunch. I'm going to select them all and right click. We're going to create as component. You'll see the bounds of the component. We're going to double click that, call that story. And now I'm going to hold down the Command key and drag this from the right, this being the bounding area. So you'll notice over here in the layout panel, if I hit clip content, those contents hide. And those circles that live outside are going to be important to the like left and right scrolling of this, right? So what I could do here is I can select these other elements. I could just kind of move them down. We're going to create this very simple kind of story structure. And I'm going to change this area, right, by holding the Command key and resizing it to fit the viewable area that we have here on our canvas. So with that selected, I'm going to go to prototype. And in the prototype panel, you'll notice overflow. We're going to choose horizontal scrolling, right? And now when we preview this, when I select that frame, I'm going to come up here to the top right. We're going to choose preview. You can see I can now scroll them left and right. Now, if I want to place images in there, I'm going to go to File, Place Image. It's going to ask me to place images from my desktop. I have a folder that I can use full of animal photos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just held down shift and I selected 6 animal photos. And what I can do is I can then place them here. And you'll see that by clicking on them, I've placed them. And when I hit that prototype preview, um, we'll see those images begin to populate. Oh no, do they all populate? Let's see. I don't know why they're not populating. They should all be there. Here, let me use I'm gonna use an instance of it in the frame. It's the preview. They're coming in. I think they're just loading a bit slow for me. Just double check in present mode. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. And that's actually going to lead us to the next option. So if you want to make sure that you can present any prototype that's on your canvas, you want to make sure that you add a flow starting point. So I'm going to name this one directory, right? These flow starting points are going to determine what are going to be viewable in the prototype viewer. So flows will help you identify the start points of your prototypes. So I've just created that start point of my prototype. And then when I click present, there it is. And you could even see the other example of a prototype I have there as well. So when I go to directory, I'm able to see that and you'll see all the images show up. And I think that this one doesn't have the correct size. I think it's just an iPhone 16. So I'm going to choose iPhone 16. And now when I go to present that, I can go to directory. There we go. I can see it. And then they're all there. And I can scroll up and down in the same way. So someone's asking me about scroll with parent. So these options choose how objects scroll within the frame. So scroll with parent means that it also goes with the parent. Fixed means that it stays in place. So if you've ever gone to a website and you scroll and something stays to the top. So let's say, for instance, I select this instance and I give it a background of like black. When I select it and go into that prototype mode, I could change its position to be fixed. And when that's fixed, it'll always stay on the frame. So you determine whether or not you want that to be fixed or if it continues to flow with the other content. So there we go, scroll with parent. And now this will scroll up and down. So scrolling is going to be one of those things where you're going to navigate around a page. And if you want to like clean things up, I can always select this, go to design mode, clip content, right? And let's say after you've worked on it a bunch, you need to just kind of save some space. You can always clip content, kind of bring that down in size. So then that way, when you go into prototype mode, you can then preview it and you'll still see the entire thing. So the fixed thing that we just saw, when I select the object and I go into prototype mode, the positioning of that element, there's going to be 3 options. The first one is scroll with parent. The second one is fixed. The third one is a bit more advanced for this, but sticky just means that the object will stay at the top edge. I've covered this in a different workshop, but sticky positioning just allows you to have sort of like a something that's stuck at the top only for a short period of time. So if you're scrolling up and you have like a category, the category will stay there. When the category is no longer available, it then moves up. But for now, what I would recommend is play around with scroll and play around with fixed positioning. All right, so now we're going to be coming up to like the meat of this. We're going to be creating interactions across frames. Yeah, so someone's asking about the resizing. Yeah, the one thing that you want to do with the resizing of those components is you want to hold down the command key to change that like viewable area, right? That viewable area kind of determines the main area where you're scrolling, and then everything else sits on the outside of it. If I didn't, oops, hold on the command key. if I didn't set that, you'll see this little window right here, and you'll even see it says for scrolling to work on this frame, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. So if the content fills that entire frame, it's not going to scroll. So that's why we hold down the command key, reduce the area, and then that's going to be the area where it's going to scroll from. And then you can just drop that instance in there, right? So you'll see here too, like as I change that area, it's going to impact the instance, right? And this is one of the reasons why we were talking about components first, is because components are going to be really helpful when you are prototyping for consistency and for kind of creating these structures to scroll. So creating interactions across frames, this is going to be the main ways that you prototype. So here, when we click on this example and you click on the story and we're navigating left and right. So the main way that you're going to prototype and that you're going to like work across many frames, create those interactions, is going to be across many frames. So let's say, we take our like little directory that we have here, and we want to create a page for Zarya. So what I can do is I can press the F key, I can click. When I click, it creates another iPhone 16 frame. So Figma will remember the most recent frame that you created. And then when you press F, you could easily create additional ones. So when I press F, it's just creating those additional frames. I can select them, I can delete them. So I'm going to press F. I'm going to create a new frame. I'm going to stack it here. So let's say if we want a Zarya page, you'll notice that I have components in another page that has elements that can be used for a profile. And I'm going to show you another way to access those. So if I go to my assets file, right, in here, I can find components that were already made inside of the file. So if I go to the welcome page, you can see those components that we created together. They're here and can be easily dropped in. So when you build components, you can also just access them from this library. So if you start to build buttons and arrows and various things for your prototype, right, you make them as components. So then that way they're more easily accessible. So within this file, I have a number of components for a profile, and I can begin to drop those in here to kind of construct, like a simple profile for someone. So let's say here, right, I'm going to make a profile for, let's say, Zarya, right? And then even here, I can just start to duplicate these down and duplicate them. So this frame that I have, I can go to my prototype window, and I can set its scrolling as vertical, right? So we have another kind of vertical frame. I can also easily just go and I can extend that width if I want to see it all. Once again, in later workshops, we will be discussing auto layout components. So be sure to, register if you want to learn how to make these a bit more efficiently. We'll be talking about auto layout components. So this component right here, you'll notice when I change its width and its height, how it's adjusting and moving, it is an auto layout component. So it allows for that behavior. So let's say we're going to create this page here. I'm going to make an avatar. So I'm going to pull up an image, right? So there you go. We got Zarya's really, really into puppies, this file. So here I can begin to say, um, Zarya, and then you can put in the content. So now what we want to do is, let me drop in a few more images to make this look more complete. So the shortcut key for the images that I'm using is if you go here, file, place image is Shift Command K. If you're on Windows, it's going to be Shift Control K. So I press that shortcut. It's going to ask me to place an image from my desktop, and then I'm able to click and make it. So very quickly, you can see how components can be used within a design to make something look more complete, some more finished. And what we want to do is we want to create a click between Zarya, this directory listing, and the page itself. So we do so by going to prototype. I'm going to select the object that I want to navigate over to. So here we go. And then I'm going to click here. And then we're going to get this like little menu that's going to detail the interaction, right? And I'll show you that one more time. So you want to be in prototype mode. And by the way, the shortcut key for going easily between design and prototype mode is Shift E. It's the Shift E shortcut. So Shift E, I'm in prototype, Shift E, I'm in design, Shift E, I'm in prototype, Shift E, I'm in design. So Shift E, I'm back in prototype one more time. And when I hover over any object in here, you'll see this little dot. And what that little dot does is it allows me to create a connection between frames. So what that's going to do is then pull up this sort of anatomy of an interaction that I can then adjust and govern, right? So here I have this interaction and I can say, okay, on tap, what is the action? So right now, the action is going to be navigate to, and it's going to navigate to this other page. When I click on this, you can see that there's a whole bunch of other actions. I think the other one that we might, if we have Tom, can cover is open overlay. But here we're going to navigate to this other frame, the destination, right? Whatever the name is, we're going to just say Zarya's profile. And we could choose the animation type or the transition. And here we can even reset the scroll position as well. There's going to be different options that are available here, right? So on tap, navigate to Zarya's profile. We're going to have the animation be instant for now. We're going to preview it. So let's hit preview. I can move this over to the left. When I click, it goes to another page. Pretty simple. So we can select this and we could change that animation. Now, if this is going to be your first prototype, I would recommend looking at the various transitions that we have. So we have move in, move out, push, slide in, slide out. Now, when you're designing a transition, you want to make sure that folks understand where the previous screen went and the new screen came from. So here I can preview and I can see, okay, move out kind of moves the top frame away. But maybe we want to change that to, let's see, push. Push kind of pushes the other frame away to show the interface that's immediately to the right. Let's say slide in. Maybe we like slide in where the next frame kind of comes up just over and the previous one is tucked underneath. And we're going to choose an ease in and out transition. So what is happening here is we're basically articulating the same steps that a developer would consider, right? So when we tap on the object, it's going to navigate to this other page. This is going to be the page that we're navigating to. This is the transition type. If there's any matching layers that you want it animated in between, so if there's a consistent header, right, you can turn that on. And we're going to choose an ease in and out interaction. It's going to start from a stop position, gain speed, and then slow down. And then we're going to have that duration be about 300 milliseconds, and we can preview it there. That looks pretty good. So now if we want to go back, let's say I just create a like an arrow graphic. I'm just going to use the pen tool. I'm going to press P, the pen tool, and create a like a little back button. I'll show you that one more time. So press P, pen tool, click, click, click. I'm obviously just, kind of moving fast here because, we're limited time. But let's say I have this object. I put it up here in the interface. You can see I'm like adding it to the interface and it's already showing up in the prototype. And we could basically take that object too, and then we can say we'll navigate back. So on tap, we're going to navigate to, we're going to go back, we're going to slide in. Do we want it to slide in? No, maybe we want it to slide out, or maybe we go slide in and we change the direction, right? So let's go slide out and we change the direction of the slide out. And that's going to make a bit more sense. So now slide out, slide in, slide out, slide in. And if we want to, that object in prototype mode, we can say that it is fixed position. So then that way, when we're scrolling, we go in and we scroll, that little back button stays up at the top and we can navigate back. So this can become more interesting once you start to add more elements. So I can easily duplicate that profile. I can begin to populate it with different content. So let's say instead of Zaria, we have Alex's page, and we change this to Alex, and then we can just create a prototype link that goes to that next page over. Same thing here, we can navigate back, and you can begin to see how that is created. So you just want to make sure that, yeah, we're going to want to slide in, coming in from the right. And then when we go back, we want to slide out, coming back from the left. So Alex, awesome, right? Zaria, awesome. Then maybe we change that arrow color for consistency. Now, there's a lot more to this. This is just the beginning. This is just to get your ideas flowing in how you might want to create this. So thinking about those flows. Lastly, we want to make sure that you can share your prototype. So if I go here into presentation mode and I want to share this prototype, I can share it with other people. I can copy a link. I can get an embed code and paste it into a Notion doc or a web page. You can change who has access. So you can say anyone has access to a prototype. You can add a password to it as well. So long as you're using an education team, you can copy that link. When you share that link out, then other people can access. And you can also leave comments in a prototype. So if I press the C button, I can say, I love this image here. And those comments can then be read by the author, and you can leave those comments, and those can then be read back if you want to make improvements on the design or you want to leave feedback on the design as well. I'm going to head on over to the file, see if we have any questions. Alex, are there any questions?
Yep, you definitely have questions. If y'all are still here and you are excited, you love the session, hit Miggy with a reaction. It's right at the bottom of the Zoom bar. I love doing the heart, smiley face. Thanks, Miggy. Yes, you have a few questions to answer.
Thank you. All right. So should I want to present my app in class within a PowerPoint? Can my slide be a frame within another frame for the iPhone? So the thing that's interesting, so we actually have a slides product within Figma. So within Figma, you can create slide decks. And then those slide decks, you can embed your prototypes. So here I can create a very basic slide deck. I can hit the little plus down here, and wait, it's right over here, the little interactive thing, and you can add in prototypes for your presentation. So let's say the welcome prototype, I'm adding it into this slide deck here. And now that it's been added, it can be fully interacted with within this slide presentation. Another thing that I'm going to make a call out for is that your within Figma, Figma has kind of like an implicit slide presentation. So if as long as you have a frame that is 1920 by 1080, you can use that preview mode to effectively present it as a slide. But yeah, we do have a slides product. Um, when you have an embed, you can then kind of add that and then incorporate it as part of your slide. So let's see Q&As. Let's see. When is appropriate to create reusable components in Figma design file versus creating it for your Figma design system? I would say that if you're building out a design system, you're definitely thinking about stuff that's going to be built out. Think about the library that you want to create and you publish. If you're working with others, there's whole books written on this concept. So I can't tell you that I'm going to just give you the answer right now, but basically, like, make little helper components that are helping you along the way, figure out what it is that you need, kind of refine and adjust them as you're kind of building out your design. And then, like, once you start working at a larger scale, the whole purpose of having a component built into a design system is effectively there's going to be code behind that that's going to drive it. So once you're kind of working at like a documentation class, that's really going to be design system stuff. But otherwise, I would say build like little helper components for yourself. You can publish a library, so then that way you can use it across multiple files. Try not to build like tremendously large libraries because they're just going to slow down your files. But if you have like some simple components that you're using to like prototype, or if you are working with an existing design system, feel free to use those within like the prototypes that you design. My recommendation is just like think about it critically and kind of figure out what is the best use for you. Sometimes you just need little local components that are going to serve, just the purpose of that given project. But sometimes if you're working at a larger scale and need to work across teams, that is why you're going to have components that are more codified to a design system. Hello, Miguel. I'd love to answer in this session. You demonstrated how to duplicate items for vertical scrolling. How can we create a component for horizontal scrolling? We already covered that. So yeah, you can easily make a component. You can do the horizontal scrolling, just kind of set up that frame. Should we use constraints, auto layout, or both to achieve responsive design? What are the key differences between them, and what should we consider choosing one over the other? Constraints and auto layout are two things that kind of work in conjunction with each other. Think of auto layout as like a stack of objects that might grow and retract. So I'll show you kind of like a key example where constraints isn't going to solve the problem for you. So if I was to have this object, I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, Command D, Command D. If I go to edit this, right, by editing it, I'm changing, and it's changing the width and the height because the text inside here is growing or contracting. And that kind of variability, right, can't be necessarily modified by constraints. What auto layout does, so if I select 1, 2, 3, I'm going to press Shift A. That's going to make all three into an auto layout frame. When I'm dealing with auto layout, the content will grow and it will push down the other content. So the value of auto layout is kind of like having this automatic adjustment to the objects. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself doing a lot of manual adjustments. What constraints do is constraints can be used in conjunction with auto layout. So like, let's say this frame, like when I expand the width, you see how everything kind of moves with it. If I was to add in, let's say, a notification. So let's say I throw this notification. I'm going to hold down the control key when adding it. That brings it as a what is known as a absolute positioned element. So you'll see that it kind of acts, it doesn't move with the auto layout. But what I can do here is I can still set constraints on it, and then it's going to move with that frame, right? So constraints and auto layout are used in conjunction with one another. Depending on the type of component that you make, sometimes you make an auto layout component that will fill, will stretch and squash, but other times you may still need to use constraints, such as if you have an absolute position element, or if the component that you're making doesn't necessarily require the use of auto layout. It's one of those things where it's like the more you use it, the more you become understand the intuitiveness of which is going to be the feature that's going to serve you best in that given situation. So with the components that I made today, I didn't need auto layout, right? Because I was still able to govern how these objects resized and how the content within them behaved, right? So with auto layout, you're going to be thinking more in terms of flex box than positioning if you really start to break it down and think of it in terms of how it will be coded. So once again, thank you all so much for joining today's workshop. Be on the lookout. We will be sending out the recording over the next week. And please, Alex, what is the next one covered? We're covering auto layout components.
Yep, that's correct. So in the chat, you're about to see a feedback form. Please let us know how you found this workshop. We love your feedback and your ideas for future workshops. We'd also love to invite you to our next workshop, which is coming up. It's going to be auto layout, creating responsive components with auto layout in Figma. I think based on the questions we got today, this is going to be a really good one for this cruise. So we'd love to see you there. Get your RSVP in early, but we'll also email you to let you know about upcoming events. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.